Hi and welcome to the yet untitled at present, Endurance Physio interviews. So I'm really excited about this. This is something that lots of people have asked for over the last couple of years. It's something I really wanted to do. Obviously, I'm already part of a podcast with Mark and Ian, the Endurance podcast, but this was just something we're going to do via the Zoom video format for people to digest via YouTube probably going forward. Now, it's a new feature. All we're going to do is get people related in and around the endurance world on. We're going to chat, discuss, get their opinions, just share our thoughts, and try and give you guys some helpful tips and advice. Now, I'm really excited about it, and what I really want you guys to do is message in the comments boxes, message me privately, and any topics or any people or any things you want discussed, then please do feel free to suggest stuff. And we'll see how these go, and we'll just build up a little repository of them over the next coming weeks, months, and years, hopefully. Now, for episode 1, I'm delighted to welcome Jo Tindley. Welcome to the show, Jo.
Hiya.
Now, Jo and I've known each other a couple of years. We met at a big therapy expo a couple of years ago. Jo's intrigued me ever since because Jo is an elite level cyclist. She cycled nationally, internationally at all sorts of different cycling disciplines. Currently racing and riding for CAM's Tifosi team and is the 2019 National Elite Series winner. So a really brilliant cycling background. But when we met was a student and is now a graduate sports therapist. So a really interesting person to get her thoughts on cycling, training and treatments. So thanks for giving up your time, Jo. And tell everyone to start off with just a bit about yourself and your background in cycling.
Sure. So I started 20 years ago. My stepdad bought me a mountain bike, so I was 12 years old. So my background at that point was riding horses. So cycling was something that I did just as a kid around the estate with my friends and had a bit of fun. So bought me this mountain bike. My first mountain bike race was in the Forest of Dean with the lads, and I absolutely loved it. I think I ended up winning the race and beating the boys, and so it was just something that I just enjoyed. And sort of, I did a year of just local mountain bike races because was from Gloucestershire at the time, and somebody mentioned that I should perhaps go and look at the British cycling programme, and it was early 2000s where they just started the what they called the talent team back then. So it was like very early days with this. Rod Ellingworth was the one behind driving the force to find new talent to come through for obviously the Olympics and the programme. So I got picked up through that. I got tested along with Rachel Atherton, G Atherton. So, you know, there was a few riders coming through and pretty much went through the British cycling programme. So I think my second year riding the track nationals, I won the national pursuit title there. I won the Omnium series as a junior, which was a senior event. So I was very much track based. That's what British cycling had, and it was, you know, that's where the medals are. And so that was very focused on that. So though I came from mountain biking, I was never really any good at the road side of things. It was definitely, I preferred track. So I was more of an endurance with a good sprint, so points rider. So I went right the way through, got to junior, was on there with Lizzie Dignan, so Lizzie Armitstead, and sort of went through to the Europeans and got to the Europeans, sort of the camp before the Europeans, and got a bit of an injury. And it wasn't really my dream to be a cyclist. So I got to under 23 and I just decided to stop for a few years. And so had a few years from the sport, and 2012 was when I first came back as a road cyclist, sort of reinvented myself a little bit. So now we're here sort of 8-9 years down the line, sort of still racing. So that's kind of my background through British cycling, sort of like that level, sort of GB level with the track and bit of road. So yeah.
So if the road initially wasn't your favourite discipline, how did we end up now as an elite road cyclist?
I think it's more to do with the sort of accessibility of track. Obviously, there's the track at Newport. I think it's called the Geraint Thomas Stadium now, and then Manchester. And there was never really. There's not a lot of track racing to do. And I think if you really want to be at the level, you know, I came back into cycling and I wanted to be good. and it's more accessible on the road to be a road rider or a crit rider than it is to be a track rider. You kind of have to be in that fold of British cycling or Welsh cycling. And, you know, you go to the nationals and you're racing against Laura Trott and Laura Kenny now, sorry. I remember everybody from years ago before they all get married. So you know, you kind of like, you do the nationals and you don't, as an amateur or somebody coming into the sport, funding your own way, it's a really difficult avenue in. So road, I can train out my front door and just go riding. You know, there's no cost to it, or I can just enter a local crit. So for me, it was more the accessibility of it. And I just preferred being outside. I just had very negative thoughts with track cycling and just didn't really want to go back there. So that was my route back into it. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm probably about 30 minutes away from Newport.
Yeah.
And working with a lot of junior cyclists, and then a lot of, there's been a real boom here of adult cyclists who've then got into track cycling. And I'm really conscious to always say, particularly to the youngsters, you know, don't underestimate or underappreciate how lucky you are to be so close to that, because there's so many that aren't. And, you know, my generation as well, growing up, there wasn't that here in Wales. So, so really maximize your opportunity. And in fairness, the half a dozen or so that I work with, they really do. They are living there pretty much.
You're really lucky, because I used to spend a lot of time in Wales, so at Maindy, a lot of time at Maindy. And obviously I'm the same age category as Geraint. So a lot of our training camps were based at Newport with Welsh cycling. So it was only just across the river for me, but it was having the track time. It was getting the track time. So I completely agree that you've got the Maindy and you've got Newport. So it's really great for that area. There's a lot of really talented young riders coming through that at Wales as well, especially through all the club systems. So yeah, it's like you say, it's that area. Whereas if you live anywhere else, unless you're based at Manchester or down at the Velo Park in London, you know, it's just quite a niche thing to get into. But yeah, they are lucky.
Yeah, and when it comes to certainly other sports, there was always I'm in my 40s, so when I was studying sports science back in the 90s, then we were still pretty categorical that to be brilliant at a sport, you needed to specialize at that sport. Fast forward 25, 30 years, and we're starting to see much more evidence now along the lines of, well, actually, as a youngster, play a bit of everything, play all the seasonal stuff, fine-tune your general skills before specializing. I think the stat I always quote lately is, whether it was last year or the year before, something like 70+% of the NFL draft in America were people who hadn't specialized in American football until college or high school. Interestingly, then comes the debate about specializing within an endurance sport. Now, something you said about your story, which is really interesting, was there was mountain biking, there was track, and then there was the road. So would you recommend to youngsters to try all those different flavors, A, to get you better at cycling per se, but B, because you probably don't make the decision that you want to until you need to then?
Yeah. If a young person rider comes up to me, I will say to them, try everything. So I've got a national medal in mountain biking, downhill, bicycle supercross. I was never any good at cyclocross, track, road and crit. Not road, but crit. So as a youngster coming through, I've done every single discipline apart from BMX. You know, my stepdad had me riding trials in the garden at pallets. And you look at the likes of like Tom Pidcock and a few of the lads coming through, or Wout van Aert, they come from cyclocross. Like, you can't put a price on learning the skills from cyclocross, for example, or mountain biking. You know, there's a lot of the top riders at the minute are coming through like cyclocross or anything like that. So I think as a youngster, you do as much as you can. You'll find something that you really enjoy, and that's where the desire, the drive, the passion comes from. You know, it is simple. And for me, I was very much, it had to be track focused. And I didn't really, as much as I loved the track at the time, I'm like, I don't want to be a track rider. You know, what if I didn't want to be that? And it's kind of, but yeah, I completely agree that kids need to try everything, and it has to be fun. It can't be, if you don't enjoy it, it's the worst sport to do if you don't enjoy it. It's hard. Yeah. So yeah, I completely agree. It is.
And I think as the fun thing is such an important point. And actually we all associate, because of things like Tour de France, we all associate the road stuff. Yeah. And actually, of all of those ways to ride a bike as a kid, is probably the dullest.
Yeah. It is.
Probably the least fun.
Yeah, it is. And so I do, I mean, because I'm working, I'm probably averaging sort of 15 and 19 hours a week on my own, on the road, right? And it's, like, I actually quite enjoy it. But then I've got to that stage in my life where I know I need to do it and all this sort of thing. But as a junior, I couldn't have stomached that, all those hours on the road. Like, just go and get a gravel bike and ride the local trails, you still just get fit from that, So yeah, I completely, like, road is really hard. It's like, it's not the most fun.
It's fun in its own way, but it's not for a kid. It's about enjoyment, getting muddy, going over jumps, doing all that stuff. So that leads us lovely on to the next question, which was about your current racing career. So you're part of the team, and as you say, put in big mileage in for most people. A lot of the people watching this are probably triathletes who, even at the peak of their season, when they're training for all three disciplines, are nowhere near that amount. So tell everyone about your current racing career, the team, how you got on the team, how the season plans out, how the season works, and then your training for that.
So I came back in 2012. I'd seen, obviously it was the year of the Olympics, and I was kind of like, oh wow, this has really sort of inspired me and everything. And I rode for a local club because I believe that if you're going to start racing, you start at that grassroots level with a local club. So I started with a local club, and I think I won 3 races in a row, like early season, from having 4 years off. And literally that season I got picked up by Matrix Pro Cycling, which was at the time one of the best UK teams. At that time there was no UCI UK teams at that point. So I rode for them for 2 seasons, and we sort of went internationally. We did the women's tour in 2013, 14, I think. I can't remember now. But, it's huge. It was the first year of the women's tour, and it was just such a big event. And it was, for me, watching the sport progress, it was just fabulous to see. So we rode that. I moved on to another team from that to WNT, which is now a world tour team. Rode for a few years there, and the direction the team wanted to go in wasn't fitting with the direction that I wanted to go in. So I decided to leave WNT, and I ended up riding for a friend's team called Ford EcoBoost. So we did sort of nationals, international. So it's still similar to what we were doing. So the following year after that, that Ford team sort of closed, and we formed our own team called NJC, so Juniper Racing. And there's sort of a core of 4 of us riders, and we were self-funded. And I learned a lot in those sort of that season that we had. We had a fantastic season at the Tour Series. We had one really strong rider, but I bought my bike, I bought my shoes, my helmet, my kit, paid for entries, and it was fully self-funded, and we were one of the best teams there. So, so I went from that. And then again, it was still Tour Series, National Series, and a few races out in Belgium. And then from NJC, I went to a Portuguese team called Velo Performance. So although they were based in Portugal, the majority of riders were British, and we wanted to target the Tour Series. So last year was pretty much, for me, a big sort of turning point in the career for me, because in 2018 I actually wanted to stop, hence why I started studying sports therapy, because I just thought I need, I'm not progressing the way that I want to, and I kind of not really winning, and I wasn't, although winning is successful for me, it's kind of what I see as success. I wasn't feeling like I was fulfilling what I wanted, so I was like, right, go and start this degree. So I ended up in 2018 getting silver at the National Crit Champs, and then kind of realised I wasn't quite ready to stop racing. So last year was actually my best year with the Elite Circuit Series, and I had a few, so I was in the points jersey for the Tour Series, which is what you can see in the background. And I really sort of, it was a bit, like I said, it was a turning point for me. I've been working with my coach for 3 years at that point. I just, something just clicked. I won a hill, Queen of the Mountains jersey in a stage race out in Ireland later on in the later part of the season. And I sort of made the decision to change coach. And I know if something works, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But I think often you've got to sort of go from the good to even better. You kind of have to, if you keep doing the same thing, you're not going to get better. So I decided, it was a really big decision, to change coaches in September. And also I've been working with a nutritionist. So I ended up having a really good end of season last year. And this CAMS to FOSO, CAMS announced that they were going UCI. And I never approached teams. I just thought nobody would really want me. I didn't really think that I'd be good enough. So I ended up messaging the manager of the CAMS to FOSO, Simon. And he was like, oh, well, I thought Fellow Performance was your team, so I never approached you. I was like, oh, right, because yeah, we'll have you. You know, we're happy to have you. You sort of gave us a hard time at the tour series. So then being UCI really gave me that sort of, I guess it is motivation to train even harder. Like for me, I stepped up another level to UCI Pro Continental level. I was like, right, this is my chance now. I'm just finishing my degree. I can try and be self-employed and manage, not work too much, just work enough so I can still train. And I was like, yeah, I've got all this big plan for 2020. Had a cracking winter, and obviously COVID's happened. So it kind of, you know, for me, I look at it, and as much as I really wanted to race this year and see how much I progressed with my coach, I actually think because of COVID, I've become a better bike rider, because I've worked on those things. I've worked on my nutrition, my mindset, you know, and it's all these little things that I've done, you know, and it is ultimately having the consistency of training, but you have to get the big things right before the little things. I'm at that point now where I can get the little things right. So, you know, like having that routine sort of thing. And I absolutely have really enjoyed this year, not in the same way as I should have if I was racing, but it's made me refocus. And I found it a very positive thing as me as a bike rider, as an athlete, massive positive thing. And that's how I've seen it, because otherwise you just get bogged down with the whole negative side of it all, but everybody's in the same boat. So, you know, and that was it. So being on CAMS is like, I've always wanted to be on a UCI team. It's been a really big thing for me. And I'm 33. I never thought I would be on a UCI team. So I really appreciate the opportunity. So now next year, sort of, you know, see how next year goes. You know, I don't have that old, because of my age and how things are, I haven't got that all-time goal. I just want to see how far I personally can go within the sport, you know, so that's my thing. So
how does the structure of the team and the organization and things like the funding, how does that all change stepping up to UCI level?
We're still a domestic team, so we're still it's really hard to say, purely because we have not had the season we should have had. So we started off in Valencia in February. We had a 4-day stage race straight into a training camp, and it was fantastic. I was like, yeah, I love this. This is, you know, pro Conti level, fantastic. And then obviously we come home to lockdown, and we've had a few Zoom quizzes, and we've had like a team get together a few weeks ago. So really, I haven't seen any difference, just because we've not been racing. But, you know, as a team, it has to step up, and it will do. The funding's there. The main sponsor, CAMS, of like they've got a 3-year contract with CAMS, and they've honoured it, and they're staying with the team despite everything going on, which is just such a relief. So yeah, it's hard to say. I think next year will be a real tell of how it's going to go. So yeah.
But I think you've had the bike out for some TTs lately, haven't you?
Yeah. So I've been doing time trials on a road bike, because I don't have a time trial bike. And also I'm a road racer, so I can gauge my effort over 10 miles in a breakaway, you know, that sort of thing. But this last week, I've actually borrowed a time trial bike. And the time I've done all week this week on this time trial bike, and the time trial got cancelled on Wednesday. So this morning, I actually went out to my local time trial circuit and did it myself. And do you know what, right? I was 1 second faster on a time trial bike than I was on a road bike because of the wind. So we didn't quite go to plan. So back to a road bike now. But yeah, I've been doing I've just done it. I wouldn't normally do time trials, but for me, it keeps that competitive edge. So yeah.
It's been one of the fascinating things for me through COVID, and it's not exclusively recreational versus elite. It's not as black and white as that, but I've generally seen the more recreational side of the field panic about races being cancelled, feel like it's a lost year sometimes, feel like they've wasted a season. A lot of them have come back with some overuse injuries, some aches and pains, because they've just really lost all direction. And I guess you could say it's been a bit of a negative, but I know plenty who haven't as well. So that's I'm not tarring everyone with the same brush, but all the people that I've worked in and around who are maybe that level up, age group ability, triathletes and cyclists of your ability, then they've definitely embraced that opportunity where there are things that I probably thought or wanted to change or try a change to, but because of my normal season being so condensed and sticking to what we know and it's not broken, so don't fix it, I've never had that ability to try something different. And now they really have. So I'm really fascinated to see what kicks in next season for some of these people. Yeah. Will they stick to the new plans, or will they suddenly default back? Yeah. And if they do stick to it, how much will they kick on?
Yeah, well, this is it, you know, and I was so determined not to waste this opportunity, because ultimately, although my degree finished in May, I was jobless. I couldn't work as a sports therapist. I literally came back from Spain. I had one client saying, "Oh, I've come back from Italy, I'm being swabbed." And I was like, "Oh, right, okay." I shut my clinic before even anything else shut. And I don't like germs, you know, and I say to my clients, if they come and you've got a bit of a sniffle, I'd rather you not come, because I don't want to get poorly. I can't afford to. So I literally I was like, okay, March, done. And I started working 1 day a week in the cafe next door, just a little bit of money. And then obviously everything shut down. So I had to take this opportunity. Like you couldn't not take that opportunity. And as a bike rider, I've massively benefited and changed in this. And I don't know, it's just, I've worked with, my coach is fantastic, and he has kept me motivated. You know, I go Strava hunting, you know, like tomorrow I've got 3 hours, go smash the QOMs, go get them, you know, go and target them. And it's like a race replication, that 3 hour ride. Like last week, my normalized power was like I've just done a bike race. So I have that motivation because I'm very competitive, you know, do the time trials. I'm looking at hill climb season now, you know, so you just got to find little things that are going to keep you ticking over. And for me, it was Strava and my coach being absolutely fantastic at I've not missed any training through lack of motivation, because I'm completely committed to what I'm doing. So yeah, it's funny, you see two types of people, and I've noticed some people who have never mind, I'll just take a steady year. Those people that have done that are going to have a shock next season, because you almost lose a year. You have to keep upping every year. I find, like, I posted a picture on my Instagram page of when I started in 2012, I was 85 kilos. I'm 56 kilos now. So every single year I have to get better and better to keep up. You know, you lose a year, you're a step back. And I didn't want that. I just wanted to make sure that I was going to come out fighting in case the race season started again. So that was my motivation almost, you know, was just in case it does start, you know, what if we do end up racing next week?
So true. Yesterday I watched Andy Murray crash out early on in the US Open, and I can't remember who I was chatting to, but someone went, "Oh, that injury might still be niggling." I went, "Well, potentially, but there's probably as much going on. Here's a guy who spent 2 years away from that level of sport. He can't just climb back on, and you know, because it's not that you just tread water; you get left behind.
Absolutely,
you get left behind because everybody else is improving.
Yeah, that's it. You know, and I took me a while to realise this, and you know, and you can't afford to take a break. You know, you can't afford to lose that momentum. So yeah.
The how much time have you spent on Zwift? Any?
So beginning of lockdown, my coach mentioned Zwift, and I said no chance. I said, you've got no chance, not interested. 2 weeks later, right, I was racing twice a week and doing a chain gang on a Saturday. So I did quite a bit of racing, and I also did the women's tour on RGT, which is another platform. And like, my issue with it is people don't necessarily tell the truth with what they weigh. That's my problem. So I can't get my head around people beating me that I would beat in the real world. It took me a lot of mental, like, talking to myself to just, don't worry, this is not real life. So I struggled with it a little bit, but I did do a bit of it. But as soon as I didn't have to do it, I didn't do it. Basically,
it's a tool in the toolbox. It's there for some, and it's there for times where, you know, at your level, if it's raining, it doesn't matter. You're going to go out. But sometimes it's there. It's something that people can use. So something I'm passionate about, something I'm always keen to do in the posts I put out is So many recreational athletes don't believe they can benefit from some of the strategies the pros and the elites do. Yet often there's some really simple steps they can do to replicate it to a point. So as an elite cyclist, what messages and tips would you pass down to the new cyclist, the recreational cyclist, of just their approach to things?
There's anybody who's doing it, there's no, what's the word, like, be as professional as you can. You know, just because you have to go to work doesn't mean that you don't have a routine where you eat correctly and make sure you eat the right fuel for that training session. So like, although I'm working, I wake up, as soon as I wake up, I'm a professional bike rider. Then I do my training, I refuel, and then I get to the afternoon, I'm like, right, I'm that mentor now, or I'm that sports therapist. So I have two segments. So you can still have that drive and that routine, you know, but it's just things like recovery, you know, stretch every day, or do mobility every day. It's those little things that will add up. And for me, I see a lot of new riders coming, especially through lockdown, all these people that bought bikes, and you kind of look on Strava and it's like, yeah, I did like 2 hours at 35k an hour. Well, it's all well and good riding hard, but you can't ride hard all the time. You have to let your body rest. And I see so much of it in local clubs and everything. And I get people inviting me out with the clubs, and I'm like, but I'm on a recovery day. I don't need to do that, you know. So it's not always got to be hard and fast. You have to, you know, sometimes slow is better, you know, and that sort of thing. So I see a lot of people making those sorts of mistakes, but there's no reason why you can't fuel. I mean, I call it fueling, but it's eating, you know. There's no reason why you can't drink properly, you know, drink plenty of water throughout the day, you know, or there's having a bit of a mobility routine before you go out on your bike, or having leg pumps, or sitting in a nice bath, all these little things, or getting a massage once a week. So it's stuff like that you can still do, but within the time that you have. You know, I'm a strong believer of if you really want to do something, you find the time, you know, and you manage that. So that's, it's hard unless somebody specifically says anything to me. Like, I'm mentoring a girl at the minute who bought a bike through lockdown and has just fallen in love with bike riding. And she's done all these things. She's going out on a club run, she's doing this. And I noticed, like, her rides are hard all the time. So maybe just get a coach, you know, if you want to progress, get a coach. You know, that having a coach really helps me, because I don't have to think about that. Like, I know that my training is going to be there. I think about what I've got each day, but I know that I'm going to be well rested. I'm going to peak at the right time. So, you know, it depends on what level you are, but having a coach is a really big help as well, because they tell you when you need rest, basically, you know, and to keep going, sort of thing.
And again, it's that number one pushback when you say to someone, you know, not everybody needs a coach, obviously, but have you considered a coach? Oh, I'm not at that level. And my first question back is, what level do you think that is? Yeah. Coaches are there to help everybody.
I mean, even if you want to aim for your local sportif, right? You know, you've got an aim. So why not have somebody help you with that? Because you have that aim, there's stepping stones to get there. Some people just think, right, I've got a bike, I'm just going to ride and I'll get there. But there's lots of things in between that, you know. And I had somebody speak to me, she goes, I've got this sportif in my head. I'm like, okay, so have you done the distance? No, I haven't. I said, possibly try and do the distance beforehand and do the, oh, right, I didn't think of that. I just thought I could do it. Well, it's 100 miles. I often do 100 miles, you know. So it's a process as well, but there's no reason why somebody can't recover like a pro, you know. It's tricky. I mean, it's easy for me because I've done this for so long. It's kind of thinking out what other people think of things, but you know, there's no reason why you can't do that mobility session each day or recover properly, sort of thing. And but
it's the message is, and it's the message I push, it's the principles. It's not the actual things, it's not the little things, it's the principles. It's managing your time, it's making sure you recover, training appropriately, seeking advice and support of people. That's the thing that we're all in control of. Now, you mentioned rider mentoring. Tell us a bit more about that. How did you get into that?
So this is one of the things that's sort of, it's just happened, and I haven't really given it much thought, and the ball has just kept going. So one of the main sponsors on the team last year has got a young daughter, and she's over in Ireland. So she's under 16, so she sort of would spend a lot of time with the team with us, and she's very inspired by watching us race. And I haven't really had much contact. She sort of popped up, and her mum was like, "Oh, would you mind mentoring my daughter? She's got the nationals coming up in a couple of weeks. Just she really looks up to you." And people looking up to me, it's something I can't really grasp. Oh, right, okay. She goes, right. And I said, yeah, I'm more than happy to. And she's kind of like, "What's your bank details?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What's your time worth?" I'm like, "Oh, anyway." So it got me thinking. And like last year, I had 2 teammates who had just stepped up to national level, and they are like really good friends now, and I've helped them. So I've always helped people on my team. And someone just said to me, "Why don't you look at offering a service to mentor riders?" I've got 20 years of experience. I've come through the system. I've had all these experiences, and I'm still sort of relatively current. I'm on a UCI team. So I sent that message out on my Instagram, and I just had such a massive response that it really did sort of take me a little bit. And I've had people from like young girls who are racing, and then I've had people that have bought bikes in lockdown. Women, I've aimed it at women because it is such a male-dominated sport. And back when I was under 23, I had nobody, as a junior, I had no one to look up to as a female. Like, I was so lost at under 23 that there was no one. There was Victoria Pendleton, but she was like busy doing her career. Then you had Nicole Cook, who terrified me. She was just this animal, and I just thought there was no one for me. And that was the time I needed somebody to look up to and guide me. So I've kind of put it out there just to see what sort of response I've got, and it's been really positive. And it's another way for me to give back to a sport that I've just had so much from. And I got the sports therapy in this and cycling, and I also work in a cafe. So it's just trying to figure out at the minute just what I'm doing with it. And it's obviously some riders need guidance because they're a little bit lost because of COVID, or they're not racing. So at the minute, it's still very much sort of in the primary stages, and I haven't really thought it through. But it's something I really enjoy, and I do really enjoy helping people. So that was where it came from, was somebody mentioned and asked me to mentor their daughter, who then got 3rd at the nationals, and she's delighted, and it's really rewarding when you see them do well. So that's kind of how it came about. But yeah.
So it sounds like an exciting prospect. Sounds like a really good avenue that could develop.
Yeah, and I think it will. I think once racing kicks off again, and and I can help more riders, and I can go ride with people, because I'd like to go ride with them, and that's part of the relationship that you have with your riders. So in the future, I think once things start settling down, it'll be something I'll really push. But at the minute, I'm quite happy sort of working with who I'm working with. I find it really, it's enjoyable. Yeah.
Do you think there's a coaching role somewhere in the distance?
Do you know what? My coach is, "Oh, why don't you, do your coaching?" And do you know what? I'm not interested in that side. Numbers, my coach tries to educate me on like numbers on training peaks. I'm like, and it just goes straight over. I'm like, I just do what's in front of me, and I'll follow that. I don't get it, but I get teaching somebody how to corner. So it is coaching, but it's not coaching. It's not that side of it all. That I've just got no interest in that side of it all. So yeah.
Good. It's just nice to know where you want to be. It's no point trying to fit yourself in square pegs and round holes. It just doesn't work.
No, absolutely. And this is something that the more you enjoy it, the more you're going to give to it, aren't you? And the better you're going to be. So yeah.
Cool. Let's shift tack a little bit. Chat about your career as a sports therapist. We have to start off with just congratulations. Qualified in the summer. How did you find your degree?
The first year was really good. It was like, wow, this is amazing. I'm learning all this stuff. And I think I saw you in year 2, and then I was like, oh man, the more I know, the less I know. Like, the more I realise, the less I know. And I said that to you at the therapy expo, and I was just like, oh wow, actually, when you suddenly think that you've actually grasped something, you haven't at all. Somebody else will say something else, and you're like, oh man, okay then. So the second year was okay. And the third year, because of COVID, I found it a real struggle, purely because we still had a lot of teaching to do sort of towards the end of that, although we did more rehabilitation side of it all with the degree. So it was good, but I found like the last few weeks very stressful during lockdown. I'm not that kind of learner. I prefer having somebody with me, talking it through, being taught. So trying to do it all online was horrific. But yeah, I got through it. And I did enjoy the process. Now it's over. And it's good. Yeah, it's scary though. You know, I'm a therapist now, and yeah.
Now with my work with Sports Injury Fix, speaking to so many therapists daily, the surprising population of therapists who've probably negotiated COVID the best or with the least distress are the newly qualified ones, which sounds bizarre because you'd almost think there's this huge frustration that you can't just hit the ground and go, but there's obviously there's less overheads, there's less problems, there's less things for you to, it's almost just a pause, I guess.
Yeah, it was, and it gave me an opportunity to really finish working on my clinic or the room that I've got, for example, and making it more professional, or getting kit made up, or learning a little bit more. So I did kind of make the most of that, although I had a bit of a break after the degree. So yeah, like you say, I had nothing to lose at all. Like I literally, although I had that clinic sort of beforehand, I just knocked it on the head. So I'm kind of still starting from scratch and slowly building it back up again. So I'm under no pressure really, because if it all goes peak on, I can just work in a cafe. You know, I'm not worried, so I'm not under stress about it. But yeah, I think you're right with people who newly graduated to somebody that's actually got a massive clinic and people working there and stuff. So yeah, it's put me on the back foot a little bit, but nothing dramatic. So
and it's also that, you know, the difficult thing about being newly qualified is building that client base.
Yeah.
But the good thing is there's not a massive client base that you're trying to keep in contact with and keep helping remotely. So where do you think it's going to go? Are you going to naturally migrate to the cycling world, or will you try and see a bit of everything?
I will be. I mean, pretty much the majority of people I've seen are cyclist based. So like beforehand, it would all be people still racing cross and all that sort of thing. So there's a client base that I do have, and I think I don't know whether it's because of almost who I am in a sense, like in this area. You know, it's quite a rural area. That's the sort of people I see, because I'm not pitch side. I'm not with a rugby club. I'm going to see that type of person. And I think personally, I prefer the cycling side of it all. And like when we did the degree, it was all football focused. I'm like, I don't enjoy this. Like I wasn't really interested in the pitch side of things. Whereas I like the idea of working with the cycling team in the future. So I think I'm going to stick more cycling, just because it's a bit of a USB. You know, it's sort of, there's nobody really in the area that I'm in Lincoln that is sort of with the background that I have, and I really want to cash in on that to be a bit different, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with it. You know, you want to give yourself some cheesy moniker like the Endurance Physio and just pigeonhole yourself straight away. But I do a lot of clinical mentoring, and it's the thing I'm always saying to guys, look, if you know where you want to go for it. Yeah. There is merit and substance to having a wide base and treating lots of different things to build your skill set. But actually, if you know where you want to go and you have expertise already in that field, you know, we've at Sports Injury Fix, we've interviewed thousands of runners at the National Running Show. And the number one thing they say to us as far as what they look for when they're trying to find a therapist is someone who understands the sport. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to have cycled at your level. It just means they have an understanding of the demands and the needs of that sport. And I say to young therapists all the time, you know, look, that doesn't mean you can't work in certain sports. What it means is if someone comes through the door tomorrow and says, I'm an international hockey player, and you've never picked up a hockey stick, you just do a little bit of research for a few hours and understand the demands and the movements and the needs of that sport and how you can help them achieve that. But it certainly does then, you know, I remember it's not even the clinic now, it's an old clinic, but where's that? You know, see if I can I've got my triathlon vest on the wall there. And that used to be, I never put it up in the clinic, but on the other wall, like a lot of therapists do or used to do, was my sort of qualifications. And then one day we were moving house and I just moved it out. I just moved it into the clinic while we were moving house. And I remember a spare to them, about 10 patients came in that week who just went, all right, you know what you're on about then. Yeah, they'd ignored the other wall. The other wall, which basically said I didn't know what I was on about, they ignored it. And I'm thinking, do you know what? You could probably buy that off eBay. Someone would be selling it on eBay. You could buy it. You could just stick it on the wall and go for a Hail Mary of a lie. And people would fall for it straight away. But what suddenly happened was that, okay, so now the knowledge you're telling me, which is the same knowledge someone else has told me, I believe you now because I trust you because you understand the sport. So it's a big thing of, patients and athletes. If you're watching this, then doesn't mean other therapists can't help you as much as they can. But yeah, do look for someone and ask them what their background and experience is in certain sports, whether it's a therapist who's only ever worked in that sport. So we've got Nathan's down the road from us. Nathan's Team Sky, Team Ineos, and the GB cycling physio. He's not a cyclist himself. He fell into cycling, but has ended up being the chief physio for every British Tour de France winner. He fundamentally understands that sport completely different to someone else, but he's not from a cycling background. But it definitely is something I say to the guys I work with. Look, if that's where you want to go for it. Double down on it, put all your chips on one color and just go for it. And it's what I've done. And, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard because you turn down work sometimes. I've got my car's branded up, and I'm fortunate enough, probably a bit like yourself then, I'm fortunate enough that reputation-wise where I live, there's more than enough endurance athletes coming to me asking for help. So I am very lucky sometimes to be able to turn down work if I don't really want to see that. And there's plenty of people who say to me, "Oh, I've seen your car. Can I come and see you for X or Y?" And they look at me as if I got two heads when I go, well, to be honest, my diary is really full and I don't really work in that area anymore. Obviously, I'll see them if I have to or they need me to that badly. But, I know what I want to work in. And similar to yourself, I like to do a bit of mentoring. I like to do a bit of teaching. I like to do a bit of treating. I don't want to do any one of those things all the time. It's just diversifying my week. And I think as a therapy industry, that's probably the big take home of the last maybe 5 to 10 years. There are many, many ways that you can have a successful business. And as we've seen now, people switching using the remote stuff, the online stuff. There's loads of different ways to take it forward. So here's a question for you. Do you practice what you preach off the bike? I think we know the answer, but...
Yes, but not to the extent that I probably should have or should do. And it is through lockdown where I've actually started to do more because I've had more time, and then I've seen more benefits and I've seen the results, so I do it even more. So I have all the stuff. So before I do anything to a client, I'll try it on myself. So, I had the opportunity to dry needle my arm at college. And I thought, I actually quite like that. So I went and found somebody who gave me that treatment. So I will always try things. So I can, I don't know, cup myself, or I can dry needle myself or tape myself. But I do foam roll, I've got leg pumps. So I do have lots of things that I can do to recover. And I know when I need something, or I know when I need to be doing more of something as well. So for example, I've been doing a lot on the time trial bike at the minute. I have my hips are sore because my cranks are too long. So I know that I need to do a little sort of step up the mobility side of things, and that sort of thing. So I do, especially in the race season, I kind of get on it a little bit more, because last year I didn't have a Swanee on the team. So I had to do a lot of like self massage and trigger point with a ball or foam roll or something like that. So I do look after myself, but not as much as I should, but I do. Yeah.
But the positive there is, you'll probably end up setting far more realistic expectations of your patients, because you understand, I remember Tom Goom a couple of years ago did a great thing. There was the whole debate about, are we giving too much? Are we giving people unrealistic exercise programs? And Tom Goom set a challenge that every therapist will basically take one of your patients' exercise rehab programs and do it yourself for a week.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant sort of snapshot for many to go, yeah, do you know what? That's probably unrealistic. I don't even have a problem and I can't do it. So I think what you have then is that sort of empathy with them that, okay, 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a week is realistic, even if I want you to do 30. and it all just helps you develop forward.
Well,
So go on, sorry.
yeah, so like over lockdown, I've kind of reduced my mobility session before I get on the bike to sort of 5 exercises or 5 different things, so that I know that I can get that done in a certain amount of time, which then I know that if I say, just do these 3 or 4, I know that they have time to do them. So I do know that if you set too much, they don't do them, and it is back, you say, it's like the expectations that they have and what they think they're going to do, and you kind of know, well, actually, you've got kids, you're not going to do that every day. So you kind of just say, well, just do these 3. These 3 will help, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's...
Yeah, and it's the big one as well when our winter's coming now. Obviously, a lot of people will be looking at strength work.
Yeah.
And that's my big thing there. Look, what you think you need to do is different to what the optimal amount would be, but is probably different to the baseline. If you do this, you're going to be all right number. Let's just chat about that, because there's no point giving you stuff that we can't achieve. So it is a big one on that one. So moving forward then, we probably will write off most of 2020. Doesn't look like there's going to be too much in the way of anything really. Will you slip back into a normal winter training? What's the plans for 2021?
So 2020 is not quite over for me. I have 1 race left on the calendar for road, which is on the 10th of October, which is Amstel Gold. Fingers crossed it's happening. I'm training for it. And then I've decided to do some hill climbs. So the National Hill Climb Championships on the 25th of October. So if Amstel doesn't happen, just refocus, go for that. And I think literally do the National Championships on 25th of October. And then it's 2 weeks off and then straight into winter. And
you do the hills if Amstel happens?
Yeah, I will do, yeah. Just for fun.
Yeah. Okay, nice. So you've got that end period. And would that be the normal time the season would finish?
No, in the UK, it is usually September. My last race is normally September, so I'm having to prolong it. But I'm still motivated, so I'm not worried. So yeah.
That's my only fear with a lot of guys and girls this winter now is they'll try and train through.
Yeah, no, I'm having to.
They'll feel like, because I think I've seen a lot of people still train really hard. And in fact, because they're not racing, they've probably not had the recovery periods that they would have in normal season. But they still have this lagging frustration that it's been a wasted year. And therefore, then they're going to try and just crack straight through. And I really worry then what the repercussions will be for next season. Yeah. So let's imagine the world gets back to normal. Everything's fine for 2021. What's the goals?
I'm hoping again that we'll be on the start line for Amstel Gold. And then I've not really looked at obviously next year because we're still on this year, but it would be national championships and the tour series. So the tour series is all televised. We'll be there to win as a team, and just national championships, I think, and then anything that comes with that. So I'm hoping that we'll get the women's tour again, which we're on the start line for. They've got Tour de Yorkshire, so there's lots to look forward to. And it depends what sort of athlete I am at that point as well. Like, I don't know where I'm like 4 kilos lighter. My FTP's gone up, so I'm a completely different bike rider to what I would have been this year. So we'll see. I pretty much play it by ear. I'll have the nationals in my sights, but we race nearly once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. So we're always racing. So plans change, and I don't like having a set plan. I like sort of going on to the next one, see how it goes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I'm really intrigued as well when you're given that insight into the power to weight ratio differences, even at your level, and how much you've changed, because that's a big chunk you've cut down. I see so many recreational amateur triathletes and cyclists fussing over these little components that weigh tiny little amounts less, yet in the kindest way, and I'm one of them, probably have 10 kilos minimum that they could just shift off their body. And it's tough, difficult conversations to have. Is that conversations you end up being involved with people and you see in the cycling world?
It's strange, because I think there's you have to be really careful with eating disorders, disordered eating, and cycling is rife, even male and female. I'm lucky that I work with a nutritionist. I've never had that sort of issue, and I'm very much in control of what I'm doing. I'm a grown up. I've and it's I've worked with him for a year, and I like I said, I know what I'm doing with it, and I have his background. So if I say to him, well, actually, do you think I can knock off this kilo? He'd be like, looking at his calculations and skim folds and DEXA scans and all this sort of thing. He goes, yeah, I think you can. And it's a funny subject, and I see it all the time. I see things, and I just think that's not right, and there's, with the whole red S and energy availability and all that sort of thing, it is a minefield. And it's something I don't like talking to other athletes about, because I don't know their backgrounds or anything like that. So I'm happy doing what works for me, and it is about doing what works for you. But it's a funny subject.
It is. And I think it's definitely something I'm going to try and get people on here who are more qualified than us to chat about.
Yeah.
I think I found my comfort zone now is to chat people about the bigger picture stuff, explain like a red S, explain, what power to weight ratio is and why it's important. But definitely one of the important things is to have that network of professionals that you can go, do you know what? I'm going to refer you to such and such, or, invite you to speak to these people because I just think they're better placed.
Yeah,
and it's a tough one, because sometimes when you've got a knowledge of a sport, it's very easy sometimes to just slip over that scope of practice and with the best of intentions. But yeah, you got to be very careful with it. And it's definitely something I think we'll chat on here. One thing for the watchers I'll direct people to now has been a really good post this week from Brad Beer, the running physio in Australia. And it's on all his social media stuff. Brad's done a really good sort of infographic about eating disorders and disordered eating, and just that subtle difference. Disordered eating is fundamentally different to eating disorders. And more people probably have it than realize they have it. I'll hold my hands up. I've definitely got disordered eating. I would always have been quite aggressively defensive. I haven't got an eating disorder. But when I sit down and go, do you know what? Is my eating disordered? Yeah, it probably is. And I probably can get a grip of that. So it's a topic for another day with someone else, probably. For the therapists watching and for the athletes listening, there's a boundary probably that's slightly different for most of us that we should feel comfortable and safe and professional talking about. But what you need to do is then find networks of people. Obviously, Jo's got someone she can refer people on to if needed. Reach out and build those networks of people, because it's super important to have that capacity to do it. Jo, just before we wrap it up, where can people find out about you, about your therapy business, about the team, and about the rider mentoring?
So the team is Cams Defosi on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as Jo Tindley Sports Therapy. I haven't got a separate rider mentoring thing at the minute, so obviously I'm just starting up the whole social media side of things, trying to get everything out there. So I'm based in Lincoln. So I'm on social media as Jo Tindley Sports Therapy.
Yeah, cool. We'll tag you in everything when we stick this out, obviously. But thank you so much for giving up your time and being the guinea pig to come along and try the first one of these. When I drew my list up, you were right at the top of the list because of that combination background that you've got. Anyone who's watching it, then please do comment below. Any questions? If Jo's not following the post and there's something we want to ask her, I can get in touch with Jo and get her feedback on it. But likewise, that's with all the things I try and do, it's about stimulating discussion and provoking thoughts and just debates about stuff, because a lot of the time it's not a black and white answer with most of this stuff. There's a big grey zone that we all operate in, which is where you were finding yourself going through your studies. It's just grey with most of this stuff, and being comfortable at being grey is probably the thing. I'm going to not take up any more of your day. Hope that the rest of the season does come off for you. Hope you get a load of success. Hope everyone listening follows Jo on social media and her racing career. And I'll be back soon with another one of these. Remember to let me know if you've got any suggestions for people to get on or topics that we can discuss that I can find everyone. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Take care.